The kingdom of Qingyun, the eastern wasteland of Qingyun Prefecture. The battle is taking place. Energy is swirling everywhere. There is an explosion. Someone is shouting that there is nothing another clan can do against this phantom blood formation. Also, someone is shouting that times have changed. These lands will belong to the Mayan clan. The warrior puts his hand on the ground. Blood drips from him onto it. He whispers the words of the Mayan clan. The guy raises his head and shouts to the other not to talk nonsense. He has already informed Brother Hua about everything. When he comes, none of them will escape. One of his eyes is closed because of the blood. Figures of people hover in the air. Behind their backs, a silhouette of a man with burning eyes is visible from the red mist. The figure in the center asks that there is someone with the surname Hua among the top 10 disciples of the Qingyun Sword Clan. They don't remember that. The man in the center says that this warrior is not even in the top 10. But he will dare to fight with them, with the 5 of Moyan. He shouts to the warriors on the ground that let their brother collect their corpses, and begins to rapidly approach them. A silhouette from a red cloud hovers behind him. Everything is flooded with bright light. It envelops the figure of the guy. The guy holds up his hand and the red cloud collides with the white light coming from the guy. A man from the Moyan clan asks in shock about what it is. The warriors on the ground cling to each other in shock, shouting that they are saved. The warrior in the blood screams with tears in his eyes, Brother Hua. Brother Hua says that he managed. This is Hua Qing Yun. Behind him, a man appears again, shrouded in a huge red silhouette. He laughs, saying that the enemy has come after all. He shouts that he is looking for death. A red glowing ball lights up in the hand of a huge red figure. Hua Qing Yun stops this attack with a stroke of his sword, leaving a streak of blue light in the air. This light breaks the silhouette and amazes all the men who were hanging in the air before. They are screaming in shock and pain. A little later, the smoke dissipates in the air. The warriors do not understand what has happened and that it is already over. The man who was driving the red silhouette before is lying on the ground. His temple and nose are bleeding. A red ball drops out next to it. Hua Qing Yun asks another warrior if they are all right. They thank him in return for his help. Hua Qing Yun asks Brother Why Ran that didn't he tell him not to do anything if he hadn't made it in time. He scratches his head in response and says that this will be a lesson for him. But these demon cultivators are truly evil. They sacrifice the blood of hundreds of thousands of monks from Qingyu City just to refine the blood soul pearl. He was impulsive, but he couldn't sit idly by. Hua Qing Yun addresses the youth, telling them not to be confused by the tales of the clan. He has to do what he can and live an ordinary life. That's the way to improve his generation. Wai Ran replies that he doesn't quite understand him. Then the pearl of the bloody soul behind them begins to emit red energy lightning. This is the elder of the Moyan clan, Zai Yun, who emits many such pearls of the bloody soul from his hands and asks Hua Qing Yun that he dared to speak out against the disciples of Moyan. He uses the hand of ghostly comprehension and shouts to them that they will all die. Wai Zhen shouts in shock and horror that the elder of the Moyan clan is Zai Yun. He is a 7th level cultivator of the Purple Palace. This is the abode of the immortals or heaven. Hua Qing Yun draws his sword. He uses his weapon, saying it's time to put an end to this. He attacks the hand of ghostly comprehension with blue and white light, stopping its attack. Zai Yun asks in shock that Hua Qing Yun really managed to block his attack. He continues with a smile, saying that he is a good guy. It's even a pity to kill him. Zai Yun says that their clan has always respected the strong. Hua Qing Yun can join them. He will make him the #1 student and support him. They have both treasures and beauties in abundance. They both hang in the air, Hua Qing Yun surrounded by blue light, and red energy swirls around Zai Yun. Hua Qing Yun asks about the fact that everything is so cloudless, but he had heard that they worked from early morning until late at night, eating and sleeping in the open air. At the same time, they are constantly hunted. On their way to perfection, they kill each other because they only care about their own benefit. Zai Yun replies that their cultivators don't have many rules, and the discipline is lame, but the atmosphere is relaxed. Their main principle is that the more you work, the more you get. Hua Qing Yun laughingly repeats his words that the more you work, the more you get. And he says that their working hours are regulated in Qingyun. In addition, he has been here for a long time and sincerely enjoys the time spent here. He takes his sword out of its scabbard and asks about the fact that now Zai Yun wants them to join them. He uses the sword technique against the enemy. Zai Yun is shocked by such a technique, not understanding what it is. A column of blue light envelops everything around. There is an explosion. Hua Qing Yun stands with his back to him and without turning around says great, putting the sword back into its sheath. Wai Zhen says with a smile that he did the right thing by calling Brother Hua. The warriors behind him tremble and say admiringly that they are not sleeping right. How could their clan's initial level of swordsmanship be so powerful? They think Brother Hua is quite intimidating. Zai Yun lies on the ground and dissolves into purple light, not understanding why it happened. Hua Qing Yun hangs over him in a vortex of blue energy and says that he has worked hard for many years, so he knew in advance everything that he would tell him. Zai Yun lies in the sunken ground, purple smoke rises up. Hua Qing Yun says that Zai Yun dared to put noodles on his ears, thereby condemning himself to these humiliations. Zai Yun replies that no, he wanted to ask why Hua Qing Yun is so strong. A purple pearl appears in Zai Yun's place. Hua Qing Yun decides to end it, and sends the pearl to the ground, where it explodes. He turns around and realizes that the spirit has left the body. Zai Yun's spirit soars into the air. Hua Qing Yun takes out his sword and asks the spirit where he is going. He freezes, not understanding what is happening. His eyes widen in amazement. He takes the watch out of his clothes on his chest. Hua Qing Yun opens it and looks at the clock. Hua Qing Yun hanging in the air says it doesn't matter. The main rescue mission is completed. The warriors below don't understand what Brother Hua is doing. He would just let Zai Yun's spirit escape. If that's how it turned out, then why not just continue the chase? Wai Zhen crosses his arms over his chest and tells them that they just don't know anything. Brother Hua practices the method from 9 to 5. He points his hand towards the setting sun and shouts that time is up. The warriors are shocked to talk about what Brother Hua is getting now. The end of the working day. Hua Qing Yun hanging in the air says that it is true. What annoys him the most is that at the end of the working day he still has a lot of work left. He's practically forced to work overtime. The eastern wasteland of Qingyun Prefecture. The Qingyun Sword Clan. A huge palace stands on the rock, and in the cave in front of it stretches a lot of suspended stairs. White-robed warriors with swords are floating in the air. Warriors fly up to the site where other warriors are engaged. They are standing, sweat is running down their faces, they are waving their swords, learning how to handle weapons. One of the students, dripping with sweat, asks others to look. He is lazy again. Another student answers him, damn, how did they even accept a student like Hua Qing Yun is sleeping by the tree. Other students also talked about him. He sleeps with his back against the trunk of a tree, wearing a sleep blindfold over his eyes. He stretches and stands up, saying eh. Hua Qing Yun lifts the blindfold, thinking that he returned after midnight, so he didn't really get to sleep. If he had known about everything in advance, he would not have become the one who put such troublesome tasks on his shoulders. Up to this point for 5 years, Hua Qing Yun remembers his work in the office. It is because of the continuous overtime work of 996. This is an unofficial working day schedule in China, from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., 6 days a week. He recalls how a man with glasses, pointing at him with his finger, shouted that he dared to be lazy in front of his eyes. We have to get up and work so that he doesn't even think about leaving until he finishes. Hua Qing Yun swallowed the pills by handfuls. Then the employees, seeing his condition, tell the boss that it's bad, it seems he's dying. We need to call 120. The boss replies that first you need to save his project. Hua Qing Yun died suddenly, and accidentally got into this fantasy world. He is lying on the ground, asking that he has been reborn. Here he is a simple disciple of the Qingyun Sword Clan. He recalls how they shouted at him that as a disciple of the clan, he should work harder. What a nap break, what nonsense. How can a student of his age sleep so much instead of devoting himself to practice? They call Hua Qing Yun lazy. They had never seen such a lazy person. Hua Qing Yun decided that in order to never repeat the mistakes of the past, he would never work overtime in this world. He thinks with complete determination that there is no overtime. Hua Qing Yun looks at the training students and thinks that he did not expect that he would stand out so much here. Someone is calling him here. This is Wai Zhen. He tells Brother Hua with a smile that an elder is looking for him. He wants to ask him about the details of yesterday's mission. Hua Qing Yun asks Wai Zhen that they didn't tell anything about him, right? He replies that no, of course not. He had already summoned them to talk, but no one had said a word about his power. Hua Qing Yun says fine, then he can be calm and is already on his way. He takes Wai Ren by the shoulder and says that the next time he has time, he will teach him a couple of tricks. Wai Zhen happily thanks Brother Hua. He flies away through the air, and Wai Zhen happily waves goodbye to him from the ground. Hua Qing Yun lands in front of the entrance to the main hall. In this world, perfection is divided into 6 stages. From the lowest to the highest go: improving Kai, the kingdom of the spirit; soul formation, the limit of the palace of the immortals; sealing your power, the purple palace; the ascent to the truth. Each of these stages is divided into 9 levels. Hua Qing Yun enters the gate of the main hall. But there is something more serious. A man is sitting on the throne above. This is the head of the Qingyun clan, Wen Jian. The 6th level of ascent to the truth, the strongest of this world, call it the sword god of Qingyun. Hua Qing Yun waves to Wen Jian with a smile, saying, "Morning, elder." He answers Xiao Hua so that he does not forget where he is. Hua Qing Yun takes out a box and says that the tea he planted ripened a couple of days ago. Wen Jian is amazed by his words. He rushes to him and enthusiastically puts his hands on his shoulders, telling him to give him a try. He hadn't had his tea in so long. Hua Qing Yun gives Wen Jian the box with a smile and thinks that who would have thought that the sword god Qingyun is a tea addict. He used his old knowledge of growing succulents and other plants to bring out the best variety of tea, which helped him build a good relationship with the elder. Hua Qing Yun thinks with a smile that this is a must for any self-respecting employee. Wen Jian coughs and asks about yesterday's mission. He had heard from some of the returning students that he had saved them. Hua Qing Yun says that it happened by accident. He takes out a red pearl and shows it in the palm of his hand, saying that he took it from one of the disciples of another clan. Wen Jian looks at the blood pearl in shock. He asks Hua Qing Yun if he knows what it is. He passes the pearl to Wen Jian and she begins to emit red lightning. Wen Jian says that this is what they... He doesn't have time to finish when Hua Qing Yun interrupts him, saying that no, I don't know, I don't want to hear, he's not interested. He bows to Wen Jian and says that if he has nothing more to say, then he will go. After that, Hua Qing Yun promptly leaves the temple premises. Wen Jian is amazed. Hua Qing Yun is thinking about the elder forgiving him, but he wants to live this life carefree. Let him leave the trouble to someone else. In the back of Hua Qing Yun, a shout is heard to stand. He is amazed. Wen Jian shouts to Xiao Hua that the elder is talking to him. Even though he has succeeded in cultivating tea as a true disciple, he cannot be so passive. He continues, shouting for him to explain why he didn't take part in sword training last week. Hua Qing Yun replies that he would have to wait an hour until his turn came, and the elder knows that he has his own principles in training, so he asks him to understand. Wen Jian shouts that because Hua Qing Yun missed class, the masters came to him and told him to demote the students. Hua Qing Yun asks about the fact that the masters actually said so. Wen Jian reflects on the fact that he seems to have expressed himself too sharply. He calls Xiao Hua. Hua Qing Yun says that it is wonderful. He thinks to himself that if he is demoted to an inner disciple, no one will bother him anymore. He asks the elder when he will finally demote him. Wen Jian clenches his fist in anger, saying, "You." He shouts that this is a great idea. There has never been a single such precedent in the entire history of the clan. If Hua Qing Yun was demoted, it would be equivalent to slapping his elder. Hua Qing Yun replies that damn, he didn't know that something so wonderful would happen. Then someone calls elder and brother Hua. Hua Qing Yun turns around. Wen Jian says with a smile that Jian Xin has come. They are approached by a girl who says that tens of thousands of students work all day long to become true students. She irritably asks brother Hua, so why is he willing to give up a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity? This is the true disciple number 1 of the Qingyun Sword Clan, Yu Jianzin. Hua Qing Yun thinks that Yu Jianzin is a true disciple and a real beauty. Even in her early years, she achieved great success in cultivation and has been ranked first among the students ever since. She is called the future of the Qingyun clan. Meanwhile, Hua Qing Yun occupies the 55th place, which is the last. Hua Qing Yun replies to his sister that she does not know, but he has been stuck on the Purple Palace for a long time. Therefore, he wants to start as an inner disciple, to re-strengthen the spirit, break through the limit of the Palace of Immortality, and become stronger. As they say, repetition is the mother of learning. Yu Jianzin says that she did not think that Hua Qing Yun would be so progressive, and would think so deeply about ways to improve. This is different from what she has heard about him from others. She bends her head, saying she was wrong. Hua Qing Yun replies to her that she is too kind to him. Wen Jian tells Hua Qing Yun that the reason he called Yu Jianzin is because several masters want to make a request to him. Hua Qing Yun turns his head to the elder and warily asks about what other request. Wen Jian tells him that the elders want him to go on a mission with her and learn hard work from the best student. Yu Jianzin is startled to ask what. Hua Qing Yun says elder. He ruefully asks him if he is laughing at him. He imagines Yu Jianzin. It was she who, because of her hyperactivity, doomed the entire clan to meet her standards. Hua Qing Yun understands that he and Yu Jianzin are completely different, how they can work together. Wen Jian tells Hua Qing Yun that Yu Jianzin is the best disciple of their clan. He lines up for her advice every day, and he had such a wonderful opportunity, so what is he dissatisfied with? Hua Qing Yun replies to the elder that he is just worried that he is not good enough for this mission and will prevent his sister from improving. Hua Qing Yun asks her sister, she doesn't want him to bother her, right? Yu Jianzin shouts to her brother not to worry about it. She happily says that they are family. They should support each other and make progress together. Yu Jianzin tells brother Hua that he can use this opportunity to prove himself and destroy the rumors that others are letting about him. Hua Qing Yun thinks that Yu Jianzin is trying to scare him and wants him to suffer like her. He beats his fists against each other and tells the elder that he is afraid that if he takes part in the mission, his tea leaves will be left without his careful supervision. Hua Qing Yun thinks to himself that the elder even invited Sister Yu to take part in this mission, but he does not intend to deviate from his principles. Hua Qing Yun wonders why he would go with her when he can perfectly fool around here. When Jian makes a figure out of his fingers, okay. Hua Qing Yun doesn't understand what this means. When Jian tells Hua Qing Yun that if he successfully completes this task, he will give him 3 days off. Hua Qing Yun is amazed to think about 3 days off. He will be given 3 days off. He beats his fists against each other and asks the elder to immediately inform the content and location of the mission. Hua Qing Yun will go through water, fire, and copper pipes for this. A quarter of a day later, Yu Jianzin stands with a sword, surrounded by blue energy. Hua Qing Yun yawns, covering his mouth with his hand. He tells Sister Yu that she works so hard. He stands and watches her work out as she stands surrounded by blue light. Yu Jianzin displeased tells him that he was late. Yu Jianzin crosses his arms over his chest and tells his sister that if he doesn't sleep at lunch, he won't have any strength left. Yu Jianzin tells him that he should spend more time practicing. She came here on time and managed to make 3,000 swings of the sword, and it turns out that he needs sleep like the most ordinary person. Yu Jianzin shouts that Hua Qing Yun is too weak. He replies that yes, yes, yes. She says everything right. He will think it over at his leisure and will definitely give his all in training with double strength. He thinks to himself why Sister Yu is grumbling like an old granny. Yu Jianzin closes his eyes and tells Hua Qing Yun that it's too late, they have to go. After that, it rushes upwards, picked up by blue energy. Hua Qing Yun also follows her in the same way. Yu Jianzin asks brother Hua what he thinks about this mission. Hua Qing Yun replies to her that the elder sent them to investigate the disappearance of people in the Tianyun Mountains, and this mountain range is right next to the sacrificed Qingyun. Hua Qing Yun continues, saying that he suspects that the disappearance is not an accident at all. Yu Jianzin replies that yes, she thinks so too. Yu Jianzin asks brother Hua not to worry. Given his level, she would protect him. Hua Qing Yun thanks her back with a smile. He thinks to himself that he did not suspect that Yu Jianzin would turn out to be a person he could rely on. He's made friends with her, too, and he'll get 3 days off. Yes, he hit the jackpot. Hua Qing Yun is so happy that even the sun smiles at him. He mentally thanks the elder. Yu Jianzin lands on a rock and says they have arrived. Here are the Tianyun Mountains. Down in the valley lies a small village. Hua Qing Yun also lands on a rock nearby. Yu Jianzin suggests Hua Qing Yun to start asking the locals about everything. Hua Qing Yun then reaches into the pocket on the chest of his robes. Yu Jianzin asks about what's wrong with him. Hua Qing Yun took out his watch and looking at it says 5. Yu Jianzin does not understand, and Hua Qing Yun starts counting down 4, 3, 2, 1. The sun is setting. Hua Qing Yun slamming the clock says that the time is up. He leaves, waving to Yu Jianzin, and shouting after her that he went to rest, leaves the questioning of the locals on her, let him do it properly. He says goodbye to her until tomorrow. Yu Jianzin opens her mouth in shock. In the village, people walk down the street, talking animatedly. Hua Qing Yun comes to the Angsang Inn. The employee asks him which room he needs. The employee, crossing his arms on his chest, wearily says that the payment for the room is 1 liang in silver. Hua Qing Yun puts the money. The employee hands him the key in the palm of his hand, saying that his room is on the 2nd floor, to the left and to the end. Hua Qing Yun notices strange black lines on the worker's hand clutching the money. He thinks about them, but decides that it doesn't matter now, it's time to rest. Hua Qing Yun goes up to the 2nd floor. He lies down in bed and thinks that he is wondering how the investigation of Sister Yu is progressing. Through the dream, Hua Qing Yun hears the words of the employee that all the rooms are occupied. There are no places. Master, there is clearly no one here. Why are you doing this to me? Hua Qing Yun opens his eyes. Someone shouts that he will pay. Hua Qing Yun realizes that he really has fallen asleep. He realizes that he has already heard this voice. Yu Jianzin shouts that unless 2 lions are not enough. The employee replies to her that he said there were no places, but she still won't calm down. Then Hua Qing Yun calls Yu, which surprises her. Hua Qing Yun crosses his arms over his chest and says that he has already said that there are no places. It's not worth tormenting him. Yu Jianzin asks brother Hua why he is here. Hua Qing Yun turns to the owner, asking if his younger sister can spend the night in his room. The employee replies that yes. Yu Jianzin opens her eyes in shock. She repeats the words in his room. Hua Qing Yun climbs the stairs, telling Yu Jianzin to follow him if she doesn't want to sleep outside. Yu Jianzin nods and says aha. She follows Hua Qing Yun up the stairs. Yu Jianzin thinks that they will not do anything that she is ashamed of. In addition, she thinks that she is much stronger than him and can stand up for herself. In her imagination, she easily defeats Hua Qing Yun. A little later, Hua Qing Yun and Yu Jianzin are sitting at a table. There is a teapot and a plate of cookies on it. Hua Qing Yun chews a cookie and asks her sister if she had dinner. Yu answers him that no. There is a very tasty food in the plate. Hua Qing Yun Rui asks if she wants some. Yu Jianzin tells her brother that they should learn to refrain from writing in order to harden their hearts. Only when his heart is strong can he. Hua Qing Yun covers her mouth with food, and she greedily devours it. Her cheeks are flushed with pleasure. Yu Jianzin thinks that this pastry is sweet, but not greasy. It melts in the mouth and gives off a little flowers. It penetrates into her heart. She wants to drown in it. Yu Jianzin opens her eyes in shock. She shouts to brother Hua how he could sneak up on her with this cake. Hua Qing Yun asks if it's delicious for her. Yu Jianzin answers very, very tasty. She sternly says that there is no benefit from such food, so it's better not to eat much. Hua Qing Yun answers her TC incorrect statement. He continues, telling his sister, has she ever wondered if it is possible to walk with leaps and bounds, avoiding 5 vegetables, 3 flowers and worldly vanity? Yu Jianzin asks in response, how would she know? Hua Qing Yun tells her no and no again. 5 vegetables are vegetables that Buddhist or Taoist monks do not eat: wild cherry, garlic, sweet onion, rue and coriander. 3 colors of clouds: pink, white and yellow. Hua Qing Yun continues, saying that they walk around this world with her. Even with a strong desire, can they isolate themselves from everything in the world? Blind avoidance will only tire her physically and psychologically. She will be afraid of anything that will make it difficult to practice. In response, Yu Jianzin asks if it is possible to practice without giving up people's desires. How then to practice? Hua Qing Yun replies that he thinks that real monks are not afraid to face temptation and experience it for themselves. He points his finger at the pastries and says that as in the case of these cakes, if she is afraid that their taste qualities will disturb her mind, then she should try to get used to them. When Yu Jianzin learns to treat this as something completely ordinary and remain indifferent at the same time, this will be her first step to real practice. Only with a pure heart can she see the truth. Only the truth will help her prove herself. No matter what happens, she will feel like a fish in water, free and natural. Yu Jianzin opens her eyes in shock. Hua Qing Yun winks at her. He looks at the surprised Yu and thinks that maybe he has said too much and her brain has overheated. Yu Jianzin leans across the table to him and tells brother Hua that she understood. Only by facing desire face to face and then giving it up will they be able to return to their true nature and know the Tao. After that, Yu Jianzin rushes to the food and starts eating them very quickly. Hua Qing Yun looks at her in shock. He thinks with tears in his eyes about what she understood. Damn his heart. A little later, Hua Qing Yun, lying on the bed and covered with a blanket, resentfully tells Yu Jianzin that his sister should forgive him. But today she will have to sleep on the floor. Yu Jianzin shyly covers her mouth with her hand and hiccups, telling her brother that everything is fine. She won't sleep, just sit and meditate. Night falls. The moon is shining brightly in the sky and the stars are burning. Yu Jianzin sits and meditates, surrounded by blue light. Hua Qing Yun is sleeping, covered with a blanket. Someone is standing in front of the door of the room. He says he was ready to let the girl go, but the man takes something out of his clothes. He says not to blame him now. He sticks a smoking stick into the floor in front of the doors. The stick is smoldering, smoke is coming from it. Smoke penetrates through the gaps in the doors. Yu Jianzin sits and meditates, enveloped in blue light. The room is gradually filled with smoke coming from the wand. She opens her eyes, thinking that it's strange where this fragrance comes from. She notices that she is completely enveloped in smoke. She realizes that it is poison. Yu Jianzin clenches her teeth in anger. Sweat begins to flow from her. She falls senseless to the floor. She whispers, "Brother Hua, run." He gets up on the bed and sees that Yu Jianzin is lying on the floor. He rests his head on his hand and looks at her. Yu Jianzin doesn't understand his reaction. Her eyes close, she loses consciousness. The wind rises in the forest thicket, which causes fallen leaves to rush up. Someone trembling steps on the ground, surrounded by flying leaves. The man falls to his knees, telling the master that the disciples of the Qingyun Sword Clan were knocked down by him with the scent of a broken spirit. A little further away from him sits a silhouette, around which the foliage is flying, surrounded by blue energy. This is a hotel employee who says that one of the students is Yu Jianzin, the best student of the clan. The identity of the second one is unknown to him. She called him Brother Hua. The man is trembling all over. His master asks again in amazement. He didn't expect the servant to defeat Yu Jianzin. And as for this Brother Hua, he had never heard of him. It must be someone insignificant. The servant replies that he could not find him, as if he had used some kind of talisman. His master laughs and says that this time he did a great job. The servant answers the master that his wife and children. The man answers the servant so that he does not worry. They are alive and well. He takes him to them. The servant thanks his master. Then an energy beam pierces his body. The man licks the splashed blood from the servant from his finger. He joyfully shouts that this is the last victim. Everything is about to end. He calls his servants, calling them the third, the fourth. He tells them to go to the inn and grab the 2 disciples of the Qingyun clan. Yu Jianzin regains consciousness and groans in pain. Hua Qing Yun looks at her and asks if she is awake. She calls Brother Hua. She lies covered with a blanket. She abruptly rises in bed, throwing back the covers and shouts, "No, they need to run. It's not safe here." She clenches her fist, breathing hard. Hua Qing Yun just looks at her. Then Yu Jianzin realizes that nothing is happening. She asks him why he's okay. She thinks that Hua Qing Yun should have fainted before her. Hua Qing Yun says that when he sleeps, unlike her during meditation, he does not use spiritual power, so the scent of a broken spirit did not affect him in any way. But he had to stay still for a long time for the fragrance to dissipate, and she came to her senses. Yu Jianzin gets up from the bed. They look at the one that exuded the poison. In fact, it is difficult for monks below the 5th level of the Purple Palace to resist this poison. Hua Qing Yun tells her sister that her social experience is too small. She should be more careful if she went on a mission by herself. Yu Jianzin clenches her fists in anger. Hua Qing Yun continues by saying that the consequences would be disastrous. Yu Jianzin bows his head, thanking Hua Qing Yun for his salvation. She will be more circumspect in the future. Hua Qing Yun pours himself a steaming drink from a teapot. He hands her a mug with a smile and tells her to drop this politeness. And it's better to drink tea to warm up. Yu Jianzin accepts the cup gratefully. She thinks to herself that there are rumors that Brother Hua is just an ordinary lazy person. She picks up the cup offered to her. She thinks that she did not expect that he would not only say a few words to her, but also reveal the secrets of perfection. Yu Jianzin takes a sip of tea. She thinks that Hua Qing Yun has been so attentive to everything all this time, even saved her life. She looks at Hua Qing Yun as a guy, noting his excellent character, pleasant appearance, but it's a pity that his level. Here she stops herself, thinking about what she is thinking right now. Hua Qing Yun asks her how she feels. Yu Jianzin coughs and waves his hand and says to Brother Hua, "Thank you for your concern. She's perfectly fine." Hua Qing Yun replies that that's fine. Then a bright purple light flashes in the sky above their hotel. From the sky, people are rushing towards them, shrouded in purple energy. Yu Jianzin opens his eyes. She pulls out her sword, screaming killer. She shouts to Brother Hua, "Watch out." Hua Qing Yun climbs back into bed, saying that since Yu Jianzin is already better, he will leave it all to her. His working hours are over. Yu Jianzin is amazed at his reaction. She thinks to herself that it doesn't matter. These two are much stronger than Brother Hua. If he gets involved in the battle, then there will only be more problems. Yu Jianzin flies out of the window, surrounded by blue energy. She stops, looking at a flash of purple light in the sky. Yu Jianzin draws his sword. Her hand, clutching the weapon, is shaking. She is still thinking. She thinks. Yu Jianzin shouts that it wasn't a coincidence that they came here. 2 people are caught in a column of blue light. A monstrous explosion is heard. Yu Jianzin is hanging in the air, surrounded by blue energy. In front of her are 2 warriors of the 4th clan of the eastern wasteland of the Purple Spirit Clan. A guy and a girl who radiate purple energy. Yu Jianzin asks the Purple Spirit Clan disciples what the 2 of them are doing here. She notices that their eyes are black and empty. She understands that these are bloody puppets. Their souls were consumed by mania, turning them into weak-willed dolls. This is the magic of the demon sect. The disappearance of an entire village is also their handiwork. They are attacking Yu Jianzin. She understands that these 2, their strength is equivalent to the 3rd or 4th level of the Purple Palace. Yu Jianzin says they upset her. She uses the Qingyun Sword technique. She uses an attack called Clouds Breaking the Moon. The disciples of the Purple Spirit Clan jump up, moving away from the attack directed at them. Yu Jianzin points his finger in front of him and says to disperse. Her attack dissipates. The figures of the students are kept in the air. They are immediately struck by blue flashes. They clench their teeth in pain. The disciples of the Purple Friend clan are falling down without strength. Smoke is coming from them. Yu Jianzhen is hanging in the air. Her enemies lie prostrate before her. She really shared the sword light. But then the power definitely decreased. Hua Qing Yun thinks that it's much more convenient to watch the fight this way. You don't even need to open your eyes. These two are definitely not planning to give up so easily. One of the students whispers to the defeated girl, how dare she? She's lying there bleeding. He whispers sick. Yu Jianzhen, watching them, says that her enemies have not completely become puppets. There is still a trace of self-awareness. The warrior girl shouts to Yu Jianzhen that she will kill her, and immediately rushes to the attack. She lifts off the ground, causing it to crack apart under her. The girl rushes up, and huge blocks of stone fly in different directions. The girl raises her sword to attack Yu Jianzhen. She blocks her attack with her palm. Yu Jianzhen is amazed to wonder if her rival really owns such a weapon. She blocks an attack against herself with a sword. Flashes of blue energy begin to flash in the air. Yu Jianzhen wonders what kind of power is in front of her. Her hands were numb. The girl screams and raises her sword to attack. She attacks Yu Jianzhen with a pillar of purple energy. When it dissipates, Yu Jianzhen finds himself in another place. She rushes to her rival, saying that everything is about to end. Her weapon emits blue energy. Hua Qing Yun thinks that is expected from the best disciple of the clan. In such a short time, Yu Jianzhen managed to study the opponent. Even though they are on the 4th level of the Purple Palace, right now they are just puppets. Their consciousness is sealed. Therefore, they can only fight with the help of instincts. Yu Jianzhen raises his sword in front of him. Blue lightning sparkles around her. A huge column of blue energy envelops her. Her rival shouts belligerently. Purple lightning sparkles around her. Hua Qing Yun argues that Sister Yu seems unaware of the danger. He catches a leaf and says it should be enough. Yu Jianzhen uses the Qingyun Sword technique. She uses a naked sword attack against the enemy. A whirlwind of blue energy rushes to the girl. He consumes her. Smoke is coming from the stone rubble. Yu Jianzhen says that she finally suppressed them. We need to figure out how to awaken them from the spell sooner. The girl lies on the rubble in front of her and shivers. Yu Jianzhen leaves the battlefield. The opponent behind her pulls out a fan. Purple lightning starts to sparkle around her. Purple energy is rapidly flying into Yu Jianzhen's back. She belatedly thinks shit. Purple energy hits the blue shield. She breaks the shield and Yu Jianzhen meets her face. But here the purple energy is beaten off by the green one. There is an explosion. Yu Jianzhen understands that what he has just done. If you miss such a blow, the injury will be very serious. This guy is sitting and holding a fan in his hands. Yu Jianzhen thinks about what kind of green light it is, and rushes to attack the enemy who has come to himself. She immediately finds herself behind the opponent, who opens his eyes in shock. Yu Jianzhen understands from the sheet that someone has come to her aid. She defeats the guy by blocking his spiritual power. Later, her opponent is sitting unconscious on chairs. Hua Qing Yun tells Yu Jianzhen that she seems to have done quite well. She tries to ask Brother Hua something, but he interrupts her and says that he has been lying here all this time. He immediately asks her what it is. Yu Jianzhen stammers with a smile and says nothing. She thinks to herself that she thinks too much. After all, with his level, how could he do something like that? Yu Jianzhen tells his brother that while the spirit of these guys is still alive, they should hurry up and return them to the clan. Yu Jianzhen points at the prisoners. Hua Qing Yun looks at them from the bed. Yu Jianzhen continues by saying that we need to ask the elders to purify their hearts and expel the evil formation from them so that they stop being puppets. But then the members of the demon clan will run away and do their dirty deeds elsewhere. Hua Qing Yun says that for the sake of ordinary people, and thinking to myself that for the sake of 3 days off. He gets up and continues, saying it looks like he's the only one who can do it. Blue lightning starts to sparkle around him. Yu Jianzhen stands astounded behind him. She asks her brother what he wants to do. Hua Qing Yun replies to her that he is using his divine sense to penetrate their consciousness and expel the formation. Yu Jianzhen grabs him by the sleeve, asking if he has gone mad and knows how to get into the soul of a true monk. The slightest carelessness can lead to the complete destruction of the soul. Hua Qing Yun tells her sister not to worry, bringing her hands wrapped in blue energy to the heads of the captives. Yu Jianzhen shouts in shock that he wants to turn them from puppets at the same time. It's dangerous. Hua Qing Yun replies to her that saving a person is equivalent to extinguishing a fire, the sooner the better. Yu Jianzhen screams that it's all about speed, not safety. The girl wakes up, opens her eyes and sighs heavily. The guy happily shouts to her, Jai Yun, woke up. Jai Yun rubs his eyes and calls the guy Feng Er. Then she turns her head sharply to the side, her eyes open wide. Jai Yun asks Yu Jianzin that she is a disciple of the Qingyun Sword Clan. Yu Jianzin introduces himself with a smile while addressing Jai Yun, and she also represents her friend Hua Qing Yun. Fenger tells his sister Yun that Yu Jianzin is the best disciple of their clan. They saved them. Here the girl puts her hand to her head and clenching her teeth says that she remembered. Jai Yun remembers how they were captured by an elder of the demon clan. She and Fenger were lying in an enchanted red circle. Hua Qing Yun asks them to tell how it happened. Jai Yun replies that a week ago, he and Fenger went here on orders to investigate the disappearance of villagers. She remembers how she and her brother walked through the streets of the village. Jai Yun and Fenger traced and discovered that the elder of the demon clan used the blood of the villagers for sacrifice. The elder was hanging in the air surrounded by fallen trees, and above him was an enchanted red circle and sparkling red lightning. In the end, Jai Yun and Fenger fell into a trap that the enemies had prepared in advance. Red magic crept up to her, and lightning enveloped her. The enemies were feeding their consciousness. Jai Yun didn't think that they would turn into puppets. She bows her head, pressing her fist to her palm and thanks her friends for saving her. Yu Jianzin asks not to thank her. She says with a smile that the person who saved them is Brother Hua. He calmly drinks tea. Jai Yun thanks Brother Hua for his help, saying that they will definitely repay this debt. Hua Qing Yun tells her not to. Yu Jianzin stands next to him and thinks that Hua Qing Yun has just managed to free two people at once from the curse of the bloody puppet. She recalls how Hua Qing Yun simultaneously lifted the curse from Jai Yun and Fenger at once, and then he calmly said, "It's done." Yu Jianzin stood there with her mouth open. She thinks that usually this spell affects the deepest corners of consciousness. Getting rid of it without harming a person is like finding a needle in a haystack. Not even all the elders manage to get rid of it. Yu Jianzin shouts to Hua Qing Yun when he managed to master this technique. He replies that he used to pass the time in the Sutra Pavilion and accidentally stumbled upon a fragment of a scroll of practices for manipulating spiritual thoughts. He found it very interesting, so he studied it. Yu Jianzin in shock asks again about the fragment of the scroll that it was not even whole. He's playing with fire. Hua Qing Yun tells Jai Yun and Fenger that in order to save them, he needed to use resources and artifacts worth almost 30,000 high-class spirit stones. After his words, Yu Jianzin thinks that he probably just happened to have it. Where did he get so much from? He's not stupid, they're not. Jai Yun says with a smile that they will definitely compensate for everything as soon as they return to their clan. Yu Jianzin opens his mouth in shock and thinks that they really agreed. Hua Qing Yun smiles. He thinks that the formation of purifying the heart and destroying evil, capable of dispelling the spell of the bloody puppet, requires at least 50,000 stones. 30,000 is so out of friendship, to your own detriment. He smilingly tells Qing Yun and Fenger not to rush to repay the debt. Their clans are friends with each other, so it's their duty to help them. He asks if they could remember the details of how they were captured. Jai Yun replies that the one who grabbed them is called Qingyun. His fighting power is not very great. She would have dealt with him on her own. She remembers the image of the man who grabbed them. He uses formations and poisons very well, so they got caught. Hua Qing Yun snaps his fingers, saying like this. He says he has a special elixir that can make them immune to poisons for 3 hours and asks Jai Yun and Fenger if they are sure they can handle Qingyun. Jai Yun happily shouts that if she is immune to the poisonous incense, she will beat him to death in a matter of minutes. Then she scratched her head and asked why there were 3 of them and why Brother Hua would not go with them. He coughs and replies that it actually took him too much spiritual power to save them. He continues, saying that he will now have to sleep to recover. Jai Yun and Fenger say that they are so blind, they do not see the hard work of Brother Hua. They ask him to have a good rest and leave everything to them. Hua Qing Yun says that then he counts on the 3 of them. Yu Jianzin closes her eyes with a smile. Later that night, Yu Jianzin, Jai Yun and Fenger fly along it to Qingyun. Jai Yun picks up a blue ball in his hands and thinks about the fact that this is really the magic elixir that Brother Hua spoke about. Yu Jianzin replies to her that they should believe him. They all eat the magic elixir. Jai Yun says that it melts in the mouth and is no different from ordinary pills. Fenger says it's not that he doesn't trust him, but the level of his improvement. Leaves are flying in the air, the moon is shining brightly. Yu Jianzin stands surrounded by foliage and tells others to wait, there is something unclean here. She draws her sword. Fenger replies that it seems to him that there is not a single living soul here. Jai Yun in anger says that it turns out. But she is interrupted by Qingyun saying that it turns out that they were on his territory. The foliage around them lights up red. Yu Jianzin's eyes flash yellow fire. She's attacking. Blue light passes through the red foliage. Yu Jianzin looks at the swamp with bare trees around and does not understand where it came from here. Jai Yun replies that it seems to her that these are parts of dead creatures that were melted here. Yu Jianzin replies what a horror. She asks if her companions have seen the one who just spoke to them. Then a voice is heard behind her asking if they are looking for him. It's Mo Xuan who is smiling. His eyes are glowing red. Mo Xuan stands and smiles, looking at his enemies. Jai Yun and Feng Er shout with one voice that it's him. Mo Xuan asks about how they managed to get rid of his curse so quickly. He narrows his eyes and continues, saying that it seems that the best disciple of the Sword Clan has secret treasures. Yu Jianzin takes out his sword. Mo Xuan asks about why there are 3 of them. Was Odin really scared when he found out that he was behind it? Jai Yun, gritting her teeth in anger, replies that it's because she can handle a dummy like Mo Xuan on her own. She takes out her sword and rushes to attack. The space is illuminated by a column of purple light. Boulders are flying in all directions. The air around begins to sparkle with purple lightning. Everything is in smoke. Yu Jianzin stands in a cloud of smoke, clutching his sword with both hands. She is breathing heavily, sweat is streaming from her face. When the smoke clears, Mo Xuan stands unharmed and laughing tells her that she has already lost, fell for his trick. A black fog begins to swirl around him when Feng Er appears behind him, shouting at him to close his mouth, because he is already a non-resident. He attacks with the purple energy of Mo Xuan from the back. He just laughs. The attack is stopped by the black smoke around Mo Xuan, who tells them with a smile that even though they are the best students of their clans, they are still fools. Mo Xuan asks with a smile about how they like the smell. Jai Yun and Feng Er realize that black smoke is poison. Yu Jianzin attacks Mo Xuan with blue energy. He also stops her attack with black smoke and laughs. But he stops laughing when he realizes that the smoke is dissipating. Everything starts to flood with blue light. It disperses the smoke and an explosion is heard. Boulders fly up. Blue lightning starts to sparkle. Smoke rises. Yu Jianzin is hanging in the sky with a drawn sword. Jai Yun and Feng Er are floating in the air next to her. When the smoke clears, they see a hole in the ground. Yu Jianzin angrily says that they missed Mo Xuan. Here a red mist begins to swirl around. Yu Jianzin screams that it's poisonous incense. Mo Xuan laughs, and Yu Jianzin thinks that the enemy really has his own tricks. He finds himself in the air above her, a dark red mist emanating from him in all directions. He shouts to them that it's useless, they can't escape from his poison. He shouts that they only need 10 breaths and they are already his. Yu Jianzin and Feng Er stand quietly in the clouds of smoke. Mo Xuan, looking at them, thinks that something is wrong. Yu Jianzin smiles. Mo Xuan thinks about where another one has gone. Jai Yun at this time with a drawn sword appears behind him, preparing to attack. She shouts get it and hits him in the back. Mo Xuan screams in pain. He falls down from his height in a column of red light and explodes the earth beneath him. Feng Er takes out a fan and also prepares to attack. He attacks the fallen Mo Xuan. The purple light hits him all over his body. Smoke begins to rise from the ground. Mo Xuan spits out a pool of blood. He starts coughing, his face is all bloody. He looks up, looking at his enemies. Yu Jianzin, Jai Yun and Feng Er are hanging in the air. Mo Xuan shouts at them why the poison doesn't work on them. It's impossible. Qingyun responds by sticking out his tongue, pulling back the lower eyelid of his left eye. She thinks with a smile that Brother Hua's elixir is so strong. Resistance to their tricks will help them cope with all the members of the demon sect. Mo Xuan, leaning his hands on the ground, thinks that this poison is even stronger than the previous ones. Even if you hold your breath, it will be absorbed into the skin. Nothing but his special antidote will be able to dispel it. He thinks that his enemies really have their own secrets. Yu Jianzin tells him that's all. She takes out her sword, blue lightning flashes around her, and uses the Qingyun Sword technique. Mo Xuan wipes his bloody mouth with a smile, and laughing asks her if she really thinks this is the end. He flies up from the ground, red energy begins to sparkle around him. He flies up shrouded in red light and saying that the game has just begun. Mo Xuan hovers in the air and uses the blood flame of the heavenly formation. Yu Jianzin, Jai Yun and Feng Er are enveloped in a red light that floods the entire space. They look around in shock, shouting about what is happening. Yu Jianzin understands that this. Mo Xuan laughs at them and says that they have entered his territory. He orders the first one to get rid of them. Here a column of mud rises up from the swamp. Feng Er looks at it in shock. The pillar takes the shape of a man. He starts laughing. A black symbol is visible on his chest. He He opens his mouth, letting out a growl and showing a lot of sharp teeth. Yu Jianzin, Jai Yun and Feng Er realize that in front of him is a bloody puppet of the 6th level of the Purple Palace. The puppet grits his teeth in a smile. Yu Jianzin looks at the enemy with determination. Mo Xuan tells the guys with a smile that they will definitely not return home today, including the coward who hides in the village. Mo Xuan stretches out his hand, on which a red light lights up. He says that he sent the 2nd one there, and he has the 5th level of the Purple Palace. Mo Xuan laughs. Yu Jianzin understands that brother Hua is in danger. At this time, Hua Qing Yun is sleeping in his bed. The puppet opens the window to the room. He climbs through the window. He has a lot of eyes that glow red. He looks at the bed and realizes that there is no one there. In the next room, Hua Qing Yun opens one eye and smiles. He thinks that the monster wants him to work overtime. The monster is too soft. There is an explosion in the room next to Hua Qing Yun. He closes his eyes with a smile, covered with a blanket. When the smoke clears, Hua Qing Yun opens his eyes. The monster growls and coughs up smoke. Hua Qing Yun gets out of bed and puts his hand to his head and asks the monster that he can't come back if he doesn't catch him. Does he really have to involve him in this? A huge red cloud flashes over the valley in the distance. Yu Jianzin attacks the enemy with blue light. He rushes towards the bloody puppet. A red mist flashes on the monster's hands. The blue light cuts into the red shield protecting the monster. Jai Yun runs at him from behind with a sword. She attacks the monster, but he stops her attack without turning around with his hand. He clutches her sword. Red lightning starts to sparkle around. He forcefully throws Jai Yun aside and she screams and falls to the ground. The monster rushes after her. Feng Er shouts Jai Yun. He releases purple chains from the fan, which rush to the monster and bind it. His eyes light up red. He growls, tearing the chains apart. Yu Jianzin attacks the monster and the blue light passes through. She stands clutching the sword in front of her. Her eyes are full of determination and anger. The monster is cut in half and hangs in the air. He restores his body with a smile, connecting parts of himself. Yu Jianzin is shocked looking at this and thinks about that. The monster lifts off the ground and jumps up. He is surrounded by a red light and attacks his opponents. This attack knocks Feng Er down. He falls to the ground and does not get up. Jai Yun screams for him. She sits further away from them on the ground. A pool of blood begins to spill under Feng Er's head. Jai Yun thinks about how the enemy dared to touch him. She breaks off from her place, causing boulders to fly to the sides. She attacks the monster in the back with force and anger. The monster jumps away from her, landing on the ground. Yu Jianzin tells Jai Yun that their opponent is so strong that with his endless regeneration, they will simply run out of steam over time. Jai Yun replies that she has a way to wipe him off the face of the earth. Yu Jianzin happily asks her the truth. Jai Yun replies that she needs time to build up her strength. She asks Yu Jianzin to buy her some time. Ta takes out her sword and stands in front of the monster, telling Jai Yun that it's good. Ta can rely on her. Mo Zun is hanging in the air above them and laughing says that if they have some trump cards up their sleeve, then it's time to use them. This is the masterpiece of his collection of bloody techniques. They are all finished. Then something catches his attention. Smiling, he asks if number 2 really finished so quickly. He seems really good. Words are heard from the red fog that it is quite dangerous. Puppet number 2 appears, bound by blue lightning bolts. There are words that someone almost got caught. Hua Qing Yun says that the elders should not find out about this. He stands in the middle of the destroyed bedroom and looks at the monster bound by blue lightning, saying that he just wanted to sleep peacefully. There is no need to make noise. He holds out his hand to the monster, saying that if he does not do this, he will give him something in return. Hua Qing Yun takes the monster by the hair and drags it along. He looks through a gap in the wall of his room and sees a red dome in the distance in the forest. A glow emanates from the cupola. Hua Qing Yun closes his eyes and prepares to launch the monster there. The monster is in shock. Hua Qing Yun shouts at the monster to get lost and launches it towards the red cupola. The monster is flying at breakneck speed. Behind him, a plume of blue energy stretches along it. Hua Qing Yun says that he has a little more time to rest. He puts his hand to his head and says it's worth seeing if there are any rooms available. He needs to get some more sleep. A huge red fist is flying at Yu Jianzin. It blocks the attack. Sweat is running down her face. She flies off to the side on the ground. She stops her movement with her hand, clinging to the ground. Yu Jianzin wipes the blood from his mouth with his sword-clutching hand. She doesn't understand why this bloody puppet is getting stronger. The monster stands, looks at her and smiles. Mo Xuan, watching the battle, tells her that since she is still holding on, it means that she is not called the best disciple of the Qingyun Sword Clan for nothing. But it will all be over soon. He He shouts to the first one to go ahead. The monster rushes into battle with a roar. He is enveloped in red light and red lightning. He rushes to attack Yu Jianzin. She clenches her teeth, thinking about being forgiven. She is afraid. Then a red star flashes in the sky behind Mokshuin. He turns his head, asking what it is. This is a flying-launched Hua Qing Yun monster. He forcefully breaks through the red dome, destroying it, and it falls into the ground with great force. Stones are flying in all directions. Yu Jianzin covers her face with her hand. Smoke envelops everything around. When he sits down, Yu Jianzin and Mokshuin are shocked. In a huge crater, the bloody puppet No. 1 is lying in pieces, and next to it, the bloody puppet No. 2 is stuck into the ground so that only the legs stick out at the top. Smoke billows from them in all directions. Mokshuin asks number 2, and then he shouts in shock about how this is possible. Yu Jianzin, looking at the hole in the dome, says that it's fine, brother Hua is fine. She asks with a smile that one of the elders came to their aid. Mokshuin also wonders if the elder of the Sword Clan is really here. He understands that this is a problem for him. He stretches out his hand, on which red lightning flashes, and says that he must hurry. He uses the reinforcement of blood puppets. They begin to take on their appearance again. Yu Jianzin looks at it all in shock. She turns around, not understanding what it is. Jai Yun rushes to her aid, telling her to forgive her, as she was waiting. Yu Jianzin shouts Jai Yun with a smile. Jai Yun's eyes flash with a purple light. Mokshuin opens his mouth in shock and shouts that Jai Yun has the 4th level of the Purple Palace. How can she resist him? Jai Yun uses the purple shadow technique against the puppet. She comes face to face with a puppet. The whole space around is flooded with purple light and lightning. This light reaches the room where Hua Qing Yun is sleeping peacefully. Hua Qing Yun yawns. He takes off his sleep mask and rubs his head. He gets out of bed. He opens the window with a smile, letting in the morning and the wind. Then he opens his eyes wide. There is a strong explosion ahead. Hua Qing Yun thinks that today is some kind of explosive day. He rests his head on his hand and says that Sister Yu and the others fought all night long. He understands that this elder is really not that simple. Hua Qing Yun reaches into his clothes for a watch. He opens them, and then he says oh. At the sight of the battle, the red dome crumbles into pieces and smokes. Smoke rises from the dome, which is covered with cracks. Jai Yun stands in the middle of a huge hole in the ground in the center of a large crater. Purple lightning sparkles around her. Yu Jianzin is standing behind her. Jai Yun stands panting and clutches his sword with his hand. The remains of a puppet lie on the ground in front of her. She sinks wearily to the ground. Yu Jianzin says it was really powerful. Feng tells her that this is their secret technique. The accumulated power escapes in one breath. Yu Jianzin turns to him in surprise. Feng catches Jai Yun falling and says that the lack of technique is obvious, too energy consuming. Jai Yun says that this time they succeeded thanks to Sister Yu. The two of them look at Yu Jianzin and smile. She also answers them with a smile that she was just doing her job. Here the words 3 freaks are heard from above. They look up and see Mokshuin hovering above them, surrounded by red lightning. Jai Yun says that there is still time to deal with him. Mo Soyan says that they have practically destroyed the number 1, which he spent several decades creating. Red energy sparkles around him. Feng holds the trembling Jai Yun and tells his sister not to. Her spiritual power is almost exhausted. Yu Jianzin asks to provide it to her. She takes out a sword, which lights up with a blue light. Blue lightning starts to sparkle around her. Mokshuin says that today the 3 of them will be buried here. He releases red energy in their direction, which takes the shape of huge clawed paws. Paws surrounded by red mist rush towards Yu Jianzin floating in the air. She uses the Qingyun Sword technique. Blue energy rips red paws, passing through them, and the paws are getting closer to Yu Jianzin. And everything in the world fell silent. She looks at her enemy with determination. Mokshuin understands that his opponent is strong. He shouts that he will see how she copes with it. He stretches out his hand, from which red lightning bolts break. Yu Jianzin coughs. The red dome under Mokshuin's feet begins to collapse. It crumbles into many pieces. Mokshuin realizes that Yu Jianzin is aiming at the previously punched hole. He clenches his teeth, saying that he did not expect her to have the strength for such a thing. He raises his hand, shrouded in red mist. He holds up 2 fingers, blood spurting from his mouth. He screams like that and immediately starts laughing. Yu Jianzin understands that a red sphere with a star and a dark red fire inside appears in Mokshuin's hands. Yu Jianzin thinks that it's a bad thing. Mokshuin wants to use a secret technique. Then the red energy hits her in the back. She doesn't understand what it is. She understands that Mokshuin has sealed the acupoints to release spiritual energy. The red energy also hits Jai Yun and Feng Ri in the face. Yu Jianxin screams about what's wrong with them. Mo Xuan laughs, shouting that his blood puppet technique is not so easy to dispel. Jai Yun and Feng Ri are standing with black empty eyes, red energy swirling near their heads. Mo Xuan orders numbers 3 and 4 to capture Yu Jianxin. They immediately grab her, putting her hands behind her back. Red energy envelops her and lifts her into the air. Mo Xuan approaches her, also surrounded by red energy, and tells Yu Jianxin that she is talented, but in front of him like a little child. Mo Xuan tells her that she will be his first victim. Yu Jianxin squeezes his eyes in anger. Mo Xuan says her blood will be a wonderful offering. His hand turns into a huge red paw. Yu Jianxin, bound by red energy, mentally apologizes to the elder for the fact that his best disciple was defeated by the devil's spawn. She remembers her time spent with Hua Qing Yun, and mentally turning to him thinks that she was so careless. Yu Jianxin closes her eyes, from which tears flow. Mo Soyan laughs. His huge red paws have almost reached Yu Jianxin. Then the words "stop and let her go" are heard. This is Hua Qing Yun, who is hovering behind Mo Soyan. He opens his eyes wide in amazement. Yu Jianxin shouts "Brother Hua" with tears in his eyes. Mo Xuan turns to him in amazement. He doesn't understand where he came from here. Mo Xuan thinks that this is the elder who killed number 2. Hua Qing Yun tells Mo Soyan not to look back. He came alone. Yu Jianxin shouts to Brother Hua to run. He cannot defeat Mo Xuan. Mo Xuan smiles, saying that since Hua Qing Yun came by himself, then he will start with him. After these words, huge red paws rush to Hua Qing Yun. The same one stretches out his hand in front of him and says destruction. Mo Xuan's red paws immediately crumble into many pieces. Purple energy hits them from all sides. He opens his eyes wide in amazement, not understanding what it was. His hands are covered in blood. Pieces of his destroyed magic are floating around. He whispers number 3. Jai Yun is hanging in the air in front of Yu Jianxin, closing his eyes with one hand and stretching out his arm forward, from which the purple energy emanates. Mo Xuan is screaming about how this is possible. He thinks in anger that the blood puppet formation he has reactivated is several times stronger than the usual one. No matter how powerful Hua Qing Yun is, it cannot be dispelled so quickly. Feng Ri shouts to him that stop talking nonsense, let him look here. He attacks Mo Xuan with purple chains, which immediately bind him. He shouts in shock that number 4 is 2. Jai Yun takes out his weapon and prepares to attack the bound Mo Xuan from behind. She shouts at the enemy to come down to the ground and attacks him with all her might, from which he flies in a column of purple light and crashes into the ground. Purple smoke rises from a crater on the ground. Yu Jianxin is hanging in the air in incomprehension. Hua Qing Yun hovers behind her. She turns to him and calls Brother Hua. Yu Jianxin asks him what is going on here. Jai Yun asks Brother Hua what exactly he did. He replies with a smile that it's just a little trick. Hua Qing Yun tells them that when he extracted the blood seed from them, he found that its rhizome had struck their souls. He was afraid of damaging them, so he only extracted the seed. He remembers how he cleansed them by removing himself from them. But this meant that they could still be manipulated at any moment, since the rhizome of the blood seed remained in their souls. Hua Qing Yun continues, saying that's why he left a few strands of the sword in their minds. As soon as the demon clan elder tries to activate the seed again, the threads will stop his attempt. At a critical moment, such a thing can turn the tide of battle. Jai Yun and Feng Ri listen to him with their mouths open. They bow their heads, saying that they have understood and that they admire Hua Qing Yun. Yu Jianxin asks Brother Hua why he didn't tell her about it, and if the plan had failed. After all, everything worked out for him, what is it for? Yu Jianxin stands with her arms folded on her chest. There are tears in her eyes. Hua Qing Yun asks her not to think that without him she would have failed. He holds up his finger and tells Yu Jianxin that she is the person who can defeat the elder of the demon clan. She asks the truth in shock. She remembers her battle and thinks that Mo Xuan is nothing compared to her. Hua Qing Yun thinks that if he had told her everything, her acting skills would have been enough to fool this elder. Jai Yun, joyfully clenching his fists, shouts exactly, asking Yu Jianxin if she could not have dealt with him so easily. Yu Jianxin thinks it looks like that. She reflects on the fact that despite the low level of Hua Qing Yun, his wisdom, strategic thinking, and insight are perfectly developed. Hua Qing Yun smiles. He thinks that if he copes with this job faster, he will be able to go on vacation ahead of schedule. Then Hua Qing Yun opens his eyes wide in amazement. They all fly up into the air, and a vortex of red energy rises on the ground in front of them, in the center of which a human figure is visible. Someone is shouting that the blood formation has been activated again. They are screaming in shock that this guy is still alive. Mo Qingyun's silhouette is visible in the vortex of red energy. Hua Qing Yun thinks about what the hell. He knew that early leaves sounded too good to be true. Mo Qingyun tiredly puts his hands on the ground while kneeling. Bloody puppets begin to appear from the ground. Someone shouts that these are his bloody offspring. Mo Qingyun rises from the ground. A vortex of red energy swirls around him, and a bright red star lights up in the heart area. Hua Qing Yun doesn't understand what their enemy is doing. Then purple lightning starts to sparkle around Mo Qingyun. Yu Jianzin yells at him not to even think. She is using a secret technique. Mo Qingyun laughs as the red energy dispels the purple lightning. Yu Jianzin uses the shattering sword attack. The red light is cut through by blue lightning. Mo Qingyun laughs, saying it's too late. He stops Yu Jianzin's attack. Mo Soyan shouts that his formation is complete. He smiles. Yu Jianzin squeezes her eyes, saying that this is her last chance. She turns to Jai Yun, Fengri and Hua Qing Yun and tells them that she advises them to retreat. Their strength is running out. Yu Jianzin is also in a hurry to leave the scene of the fight. Hua Qing Yun remains motionless in the air. He tells the guys to go first, and he will catch up. Yu Jianzin, Jai Yun and Feng return to him in surprise. Yu Jianzin asks Brother Hua about what he is waiting for. We need to leave soon. Mo Qingyun shouts to them that they want to escape. Red energy envelops Feng Ri and he turns into a bloody puppet wrapped in purple lightning. Mo Qingyun shouts at them that they are pathetic insects and he will show them the power of real poison. His figure is in the center of a huge red silhouette that grabs his enemies. Jai Yun says that damn, he caught her because her strength ran out. She is being squeezed in her fist by a huge red monster created by Mo Qingyun. Feng Ri sighs heavily, saying that this guy is invincible. They think that their enemy was absolutely at the 5th level of the Purple Palace, but now, he's on the 8th. Yu Jianzin opens her eyes in horror. Jai Yun is talking about God. Is he just going to deal with them with his bloody formation? Feng Ri replies to her that maybe Mo Qingyun just absorbed his puppets. They think it probably looks like that. Mo Qingyun says that number 1 and number 2 were the best in his collection. He didn't think they could beat them. Jai Yun says that even if number 1 is much stronger than them, they would have coped with the second one. But now these 3 are one. She opens her eyes wide, thinking that it can't be. Mo Qingyun laughs, saying no, he is also a victim. A dark red staff appears in his hands. He points up with his staff, saying that he was forcibly raised as a bloodthirsty soldier. Jai Yun and Feng Ri are thinking about what it means to raise a soldier. Yu Jianzin looks at how the also captured Hua Qing Yun looks at the clock and counts 5, 4. She asks her brother what he is doing. Feng Ri says that it is written in ancient books that demon warriors first appeared 10,000 years ago. Countless decent people were beheaded, and most of the land became owned by the demon clan. It was only when the 5 clans joined together to confront them that they were able to defeat the demon clan troops and put an end to this catastrophe. Hua Qing Yun counts 3. Mo Qingyun laughs, telling Feng Ri that he has witnessed many things. He saw the shedding of blood, souls that were taken by force. All of this helped shape warriors like him. Hua Qing Yun counts to 2. Mo Qingyun is shouting that today they have the honor to become an offering for his blood formation. Here Mo Son is startled to ask what is going on. He doesn't understand what that sound is. Hua Qing Yun looks at his watch. He closes his eyes, saying that he will have to work overtime. Mo Qingyun asks again about overtime and what Hua Qing Yun means. Then a blue whirlwind of light sweeps by and destroys the silhouette created by Mo Qingyun. He flies away screaming. Blood sprays from his mouth. Hua Qing Yun replies to Mo Qingyun that he said that his death hour had come.